Hey there guys, this is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth on the battle for the free flow of information online, which continues to rage on. We now have this from the Canadian government. Feds asking Canadians to take a leap of faith that Bill C-10 won't hurt free speech. The government's new wording for Bill C-10 is aimed at clarifying social media regulations and ensuring Canadians that Instagram posts or YouTube videos won't be subject to CRT regulations. But until the CRTC drafts those rules, the impact of them won't be very clear, experts say. Now, I've already covered Bill C-10 extensively in this video: censorship on steroids, the truth about Bill C-10, and the great Canadian internet firewall. We say here, ladies and gentlemen, this is an emergency broadcast. Independent media is currently on the chopping block. The powers that ought not to be are terrified of their ability to reach the minds of our ability to reach the minds of millions of people, and they're going into full-blown attack mode with Bill C-10. I'll put links to all this stuff in the description, guys. I'd also encourage you to check out this interview I did with Russia Today here called Dan Dix Responds to the Facebook Purge. Internet Bill of Rights is not what we need. Again, vital information is in this interview, guys. Again, links will be located in the description below. But this is bringing us to today. Feds are now asking Canadians to take a leap of faith that Bill C-10 won't be hurting free speech. And today we're going to look at the history of these pieces of legislation and why you got to be insane to take that leap of faith, guys. But just before we do, I'd ask that you check us out here at pressfortruth.ca/donate. If you appreciate our efforts to counter all the propaganda coming from the mainstream, we're up against a behemoth when it comes to that, guys, so we certainly need your help. You can contribute a one-time donation with PayPal by clicking there. You can contribute Bitcoin by clicking on this banner here. You can become a patron by clicking on this banner. You can contribute other cryptocurrencies by clicking there. You can sign up to the Patreon alternative for monthly reoccurring amounts here. Here you can send an e-transfer to dan@pressfortruth.ca, or you can keep it old school if you like. We accept cash, checks, or simply just words of encouragement that can be sent to our P.O. Box. Links, once again, are all located in the description below. Okay, guys, here we have the government asking you to take a leap of faith when it comes to legislation, amendments to the legislation that they are now drafting, to just say, please just trust us. And we're going to explain in this video why you absolutely should not. The amendments come after both the NDP and the Conservatives have openly slammed the legislation, which is intended to modernize the Broadcasting Act to reflect the fact that how Canadians consume things like news and music and movies has changed. But now, experts say the proposed law is full of murky details that won't be ironed out until the CRTC drafts the specific regulations associated with the bill, and that in the meantime, the government is asking Canadians to trust them, that the rules won't go too far. They're asking for a leap of faith that this bill will be sorted when it hits the CRTC, said Emily Laidlaw, Canada Research Chair in Cybersecurity Law at the University of Calgary. The government says the new amendments would restrict the CRTC's power, allowing them to regulate social media in just 3 different ways. The CRTC will be able to ask a platform how much revenue they make. The CRTC will also be able to ask for certain percentages of those revenues to be funneled into Canadian cultural production funds. And finally, it will be empowered to provide discoverability requirements for Canadian creators, meaning the CRT can draft certain rules, like forcing a certain amount of Arkells or Celine Dion's or other Canadian artists to pop up in your recommended videos. The exact shape that these new regulations take would be up to the CRTC and not the government, and they have yet to be determined, ladies and gentlemen. Here's where I have a problem with this whole yet to be determined part. I've been covering the attempt to block the free flow of information online for over a decade now. In fact, I'm going to point you back to this video in particular, which I put out January of 2012, guys. This one's called SOPA, the End of the Internet as We Know It. The Stop Online Piracy Act will change the internet as we know it in an effort to censor and block the free flow of information. Again, this is called SOPA. This came out in January of 2012. And look at this, guys. We fast forward just 6 months, and 6 months later, in June of 2012, I was already reporting on this. CISPA is the new SOPA. Of course, the amendments were rejected. The legislation was not passed, and they just had to rebrand this into CISPA instead of SOPA. Congress is now considering legislation that would give companies a free pass to monitor and collect communications, including huge amounts of personal data, like your text messages and emails, and share that data with the government and anyone else. Again, screaming at the rooftops here way back in 2012 that this is an issue, and it continued. We have in British Columbia, the Personal Information Protection Act, going back to 2015. And again, I've exposed this at great lengths, showing how it was kind of a ruse, like the title. Sounds good, Personal Information Protection Act, but it was totally about blocking the free flow of information online. And of course, we can all go all the way back to this, guys, the Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement. The Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement is a multilateral treaty for the purpose of establishing international standards for intellectual property rights enforcement that did not enter into force. The agreement aims to establish an international legal framework for targeting counterfeit goods, genetic medicines, and copyright infringement on the internet, and would create a new governing body outside the existing forums, such as the WTO and the World Intellectual Property Organization or the UN. The agreement was signed by all of these countries here, guys, and as you can see, look at all of this. You got the criticisms here: secrecy of negotiations, threats to freedoms and human rights, criminalizing genetic medicine. This was huge. The legal scope, the parallels with SOPA and PIPA, requests for disclosure from all these countries, protests and petitions popping up everywhere. Again, this goes back to 2011, and they've continuously been just trying to rebrand this thing, change its name, maybe amend it, and it never works. It never works. They're always butting at heads when it comes to these amendments, and then they end up just trying to draft some new piece of legislation and rebrand it, and then the critics speak out and say, no, there's a violation of our privacy. Repeat, recycle, repeat, repeat, repeat. Here we are, guys, and now they're asking you to just trust them, take a leap of faith that Bill C-10 is not going to hurt free speech, so we're just going to draft up this stuff and just trust us this time that we're going to get it right. More broadly, the bill aims to modernize the Broadcasting Act to reflect the fact that Canadians consume things like music and movies differently nowadays. And as Canadians' consumption habits move online and ad money follows suit, Google and Facebook alone account for 80% of online advertising revenue in 2019. According to this research report. By bringing platforms like YouTube and Facebook under the Act, these companies would have to fork over a chunk of their profits to the Canada Media Fund, which funds made in Canada programming. They would also be forced to make Canadian content more visible on their platforms. The goal is to create an even playing field where foreign web giants can begin to contribute to Canadian culture the same way Canadian broadcasters do. Well, the question is, what are they going to determine is a web giant? Or a broadcaster, for that matter. I mean, I think yours truly is on the chopping block, guys. They're going to look into what is the size of your audience, what is your reach, what is your ability to affect the minds of the masses, how much money are you making. All these things will come into consideration, and then it will fully continue to be regulated just like they want it to be, which is why we cannot trust this. It's mind-boggling. Laidlaw said the broad nature of the bill could have unintended consequences. I wouldn't say unintended, guys. This is fully the point all along. For example, while the government might require a social media algorithm to make Canadian content more discoverable, it could have the inadvertent impact of elevating harmful content, providing it's made in Canada. The reasons why this needs to be narrowly crafted, a strict reading of this would be that any of the kind of hateful content would have to be discoverable, Laidlaw explained. And don't forget, guys, I have been labeled by the anti-hate group here in Canada as one of these hateful content producers, and they have been given grants by the Liberals in the tunes of hundreds of thousands of dollars to launch a mass flagging campaign to have me shut down. They effectively shut down my GoFundMe page, my MailChimp account, my Twitter page, my YouTube. I eventually got that back, but my PFT Twitter, all of this coming at the hands of the funding of the Canadian government. So this is a battle between the independent media and the mainstream. Make no mistake about it. Bill C-10 is all about wiping out the competition. That's it. It's still broad. It's the main things that they wanted before. It's still discoverability rules. It's still imposing financial contributions. So most of the stuff is still in here. The big thing that had been promised a week ago is that things would be made very soon crystal clear that user-generated content and therefore speech would not be regulated. The amendments introduced following that simply confirmed that user-generated content, which is speech, will be subjected to regulation. So they say one thing and do the complete opposite. So we're right back to where we started. He said that even with the changes, the bill still requires social media companies to comply with CRTC regulations. That means rather than leaving your content untouched, responsibility for regulating user-generated content like your cat videos and Instagram reels will simply fall on the social media platforms. They're saying we're not going to regulate you, but we're going to get somebody else to do it for us. Meanwhile, after a week of heated debate, the Canadian Heritage Committee has sent Bill C-10 for a second chartered review. Again, I'm going to put links to everything in the description here, guys. This is a long article. I don't want to read the whole thing to you here in this video. Again, links to everything are located in the description below, but they kind of wrap it up here saying, proposed amendments to C-10 severely limit the powers of the CRTC to regulate social media platforms. Yeah, right. And again, clearly prevent individuals from regulations, he said. Still, the opposition remains unconvinced. Speaking Friday, Conservative leader Erin O'Toole said the proposed changes don't address his party's concerns. These amendments that have been suggested do not protect the freedom of expression and concerns that not only the Conservative Party has, but thousands of Canadians. He called on him to pull this bill and start fresh. I don't think they can fix it. I don't think they need to go back to the drafting board with it at all. So, yeah, guys, that's where we're at. They're butting heads once again, and as I've shown you, we've covered this when it was SOPA. We covered this when it was CISPA. We went into this when it was PIPA. We covered it back then when it was ACTA. And now, guys, it's Bill C-10, and they're asking you to take a leap of faith. I hope we've been able to show you today why you shouldn't do that, why you shouldn't trust government, and how you can pretty much guarantee when they tell you these things, they often do the exact opposite. So continue to just tune out of these channels and these of sources of information, and continue to support us here in the field of alternative media who are trying to counter all this insane propaganda that we're getting. Of course, we're not going to take a leap of faith with the government, guys. You'd have to be absolutely insane to do so. Please click the thumbs up button if you agree. Don't forget to check us out here at pressfortruth.ca/donate. As I said, I'm up against a behemoth here when it comes to the MSM and the powers that they have. And I'm trying to counter this narrative that they're constantly putting out there, guys. And if you appreciate my efforts to do that, once again, please check the links in the description below to where you can find us here at pressfortruth.ca/donate. And that's all for today, my friends. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Stay tuned. We're going to have more video reports coming soon. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth. We all want truth. The truth will set you free.